So I have been trying to figure out how to play around more with AI, ChatGPT specifically. It's in the news. We know it's coming. I think it's going to be one of those monumental sea changes in our lives. So I've been trying to figure out how to use it. And one of the best ways to do that is to use it in things that you do every day. So today I've got 6 tips plus a surprise bonus tip I didn't even know it could do for how to use ChatGPT in the kitchen. So the first thing we're talking about today is sometimes you have a recipe that you think, man, that looks good, but it makes way too much because, let's face it, 24 cookies, I would eat 24 cookies, and I really don't want to eat 24 cookies. So you can just copy the URL, paste it into ChatGPT, and ask, how do I have this recipe? I only want to make half of this. Can you just adjust it for me? And you drop it in, and it takes everything in, spits it out, and gives you all the information. One of the things I'm always curious about in a recipe is if it calls for 1 egg and I want to make half a recipe, what do I do with that? I'm not really quite sure what would happen if I just used the egg. So you can see here, ChatGPT kind of tells you. For this recipe, it's probably fine. It's not enough to make much of a difference. Cool. Now we're going to try another recipe. It's along the same lines. I still want to make half of this recipe. This time I'm just going to cut and paste the entire web page. All the ads, everything, Command A, copy everything, paste it into ChatGPT. Then I like to add those little dashes before my question to kind of break apart what's the recipe and what's the question I have. So I feed that all in, and this time it kind of shows you, used 3 eggs. Now it's only an egg and a half. Maybe I don't want to use an egg and a half. So I ask it, what would happen if I just used 1 egg? And it really does a good job of walking you through and kind of explaining that the egg adds a little structure. You might want to increase the flour. You might lose some of the moisture. So you could add a little bit of milk, increase the fat and the moisture content. That's super helpful. Those are kind of the baking secrets that I don't just have in my head. Okay, so great, ChatGPT. Could you give me the recipe with just using 1 egg? And it does, calculates it. It's kind of telling you the alterations that it's made, talks about the addition of a little bit of milk and the increase in flour to change the structure of the cookie. However, this is one of the things we're still seeing in ChatGPT. It doesn't always get everything quite right because in the original egg and a half recipe, it used a 1/4 cup of flour. And the last time I checked, a 1/4 cup of flour is 4 tablespoons of flour. And it's saying the increased flour is 3 tablespoons of flour. So that's not quite right. ChatGPT is only going to get better. And when I say ChatGPT, I mean all of these AI models. You might use Gemini, you might use DeepSeek. They're all just going to get better and better. Okay, this next tip, I'm just asking for an ingredient substitute. And we've all done this with Google for a long time. So it doesn't feel like there's much new here. But one of the fun things to do with these AI models is just ask them questions you could Google, but see what kind of answers they're giving you. Because sometimes they give you a better explanation of why you're doing something instead of just, here's how you substitute. I need brown sugar for this recipe. I only have white sugar. What am I going to do? And this one's a pretty simple substitution, but it does talk about the moisture content of brown sugar affecting things and what may happen to the baked good you're looking for. Just fun to play with. Now, these next several tips that we're talking about are useful if you're tracking macros or counting calories or just looking for general nutrition information. So in this one, I've got my grandmother's banana bread recipe. I just typed it in from the recipe card that I have and said, this makes a loaf of banana bread. What would be the nutritional breakdown of this, and what would be a typical serving for a loaf of bread? And it gives me that information and gives me a breakdown. Excellent, super helpful. But then here's the thing I didn't expect. It asks me, would you like to know what would happen if you used less sugar? Do you want to substitute something else? Well, yes, I do want to know what that breakdown would look like if I used less sugar. I quite often cut down the sugar in this because bananas are pretty sweet anyway. But look at that. It just creates a whole chart giving you a breakdown of each variation. And it even gives you a little tip about, you could probably use roughly this amount less sugar and it'll still work out fine. This is like having a baker in my kitchen that I didn't even know about. Along those same lines, I recently made a Mediterranean dip that I really love, and I'm always looking for ways to add a little extra protein in my diet. And I was curious, is this actually a good source of protein? How much does this actually add? I just took pictures of the back of the 3 containers, and they're not even good pictures. One of them I had to kind of do because the container was a little bit curved. And I just drug those right into ChatGPT, and I said, I'm using half of each of these packages. What is the nutrition breakdown? And look at that. It did just a phenomenal job of giving me this nice little table that I could use. It turns out it's a decent source of protein. But then I said, okay, that's 1 container for me. I eat this through the week. Really, it makes 6 servings. Give me a breakdown for each individual serving. No problem. This is awesome because, if you're tracking macros in those apps, they do a pretty good job if you're buying prepackaged food. As soon as you add anything to it or cook your own, it's like you're penalized a little bit and going, well, I don't know what to do with that. So this is kind of great. It just breaks it down for you. And our final tip is asking ChatGPT to help you cook. Sometimes you're not really sure, can I do that with this? So you just ask it. I took a picture of a package of frozen broccoli, nothing special. I asked it, can I cook this in the air fryer? And it gave me a complete recipe with steps and even seasoning tips. Okay, I'll try that. Salt. Let's give that a real toss. In it goes. Okay. Let's see what we've got. I believe I burnt the garlic a touch. Nice and tender though. ChatGPT inspired air fryer broccoli. Not too bad. Okay, so I hope this helped you kind of see how you can just play around with ChatGPT if you've been curious about all the AI fuss that you've been hearing about. So if you're at all curious and are just wanting to stay up on technology a little bit, this I found was a really good way to just play with it and see what it could do. Thanks for watching. See you next time.